Hello and welcome to News Central TV. I am Mazino Appeal. The top stories this hour. Human rights lawyer Dele Farotimi arrested. President Tinubu Ramaphosa seek Nigeria-South Africa strategic partnerships. South Africa leads G20 meeting, puts Africa's needs in spotlight. Details coming up now. Now we begin the news this hour with developments on our earlier breaking story. Reports say human rights lawyer and activist Dele Farotimi has been arrested by security operatives. Activist Omoyele Sowore announced the arrest on X. Sowore urged the police to release Farotimi immediately and warned against the practice of individuals using the police for personal disputes. Farotimi, a vocal government critic, previously reported police attempts to abduct him after receiving summons in November. And in more news now, petitions. Now, Farotimi had claimed the police summons follows a defamation petition against him by lawyers linked to the chairman of UBA Group, Tony Elumelu. This incident adds to concerns over Nigerian security forces allegedly targeting journalists and critics. Cases like FIJ's Daniel Ojukwu detained for 10 days and Ben Kingsley's Mwasara's unlawful arrest in Enugu highlight growing fears of arbitrary arrest being weaponized. Earlier, a lawyer to Dele Farotimi, Ralph Nwoke, spoke exclusively to News Central on this latest attempt, or rather development.
On a lot of issues because we're presently in court. What I can tell you is that we received an invite from the Zone 2 police station on the 11th of November, and I accompanied him to the Zone 2 police station on the 16th, and he was released on bail on several cognizance, and we asked to come back on the 21st, and we went back on the 21st, and after that we didn't hear anything again from them. They asked us afterwards. There were a lot of things that happened. His associates arrested and abducted in some cases. I know that Mr. Farotimi had a press conference yesterday. I was at the press conference and I know he spoke. On the 21st of November, and all the calls and the arrest of his of the security guard at a store where he has interest in on last week Friday. So he spoke on all those issues, and I want to be very careful not to go into more details. I'm also told that there is a publication on the social, or there are publications on his social media handles where he clearly stated some of these events. And Mr. Farotimi hasn't been to Ekiti State in a very long while. And some of the issues that I'm aware that people are complaining about, like I said, we're in court. I don't want to go into a lot of details. The issues that happened here in Lagos, so we're a bit surprised. When the guys who came here today, when they came here, there was no way to identify if they were from Ekiti State Command. They were mufti, but they had jackets that had Rapid Response Squad written, white over black. So there was no way we could identify if they were from the Ekiti State Police Command. We know that men came here wearing jeans and jackets, and they had AK-47 and all that, and they refused to identify themselves. They threatened people, they assaulted people, they took away our devices. All our mobile devices were taken.
Our News Central has reached out to Commissioner of Police Lagos State Lanre Shola and our Lagos State PPRO Benjamin Hundeyin, but no response at the time of this report since. And moving on now, away from that, Nigeria's Attorney General and Minister of Justice Prince Lateef Fagbemi San has called on the International Criminal Court to end its prolonged investigation into the Nigerian army, the Nigerian military, I beg your pardon. Now, speaking at the 23rd session of the Assembly of State Parties to the Rome Statutes in The Hague, Netherlands, Fagbemi highlighted Nigeria's commitments to justice and the fight against terrorism. The Attorney General emphasized that Nigeria has consistently shown its dedication to confronting impunity and holding perpetrators of heinous crimes accountable. He noted that the preliminary examination into alleged crimes in Nigeria has dragged on for 14 years, a situation he described as demoralizing for military personnel risking their lives in the fight against terrorism. Fagbemi reaffirmed Nigeria's status as a responsible state party to the Rome Statute, stating that the country has actively engaged with the ICC and upheld international humanitarian laws. Earlier, a lawyer and public affairs analyst, Justice Ejiono, spoke to us on this development.
Of Boko Haram and the Nigerian army in particular, especially in the Middle Belt. That's number one. And number two, the way the Nigerian army also engages with civilians, and the flagship of which is the 2016 massacre of the Shiites. So those are two major triggers of the investigation that commenced in 2010, especially the preliminary investigation. And I learned that it became a full-blown investigation after the judicial imprimatur of the International Criminal Court. It became a full-blown investigation in 2020. And it has been the call and clamor of Amnesty International, the arch enemy, in a manner of speaking, of the Nigerian army that has resulted in Nigeria being investigated. And I must tell you, Mazino, that one of the major reasons why the International Criminal Court will go into investigating a country is because they do not have confidence in the local justice system of that country to actually hold agencies of government like the Nigerian army responsible, or even the Nigerian government at large responsible in the event that they are using other law enforcement agencies. So it is this bankruptcy of trust, this bankruptcy of confidence, that justice will be made available to persons who suffer it, that crimes and criminalities, especially on a large scale, will not be covered by law enforcement. That is the reason why the International Criminal Court largely still has business in this regard. Otherwise, if the local law enforcement or local judicial system is trusted, especially the prosecutors are trusted, then the International Criminal Court will not really want to have a business with expending their meager resources to investigate the Nigerian state, for example.
To other matters now, the former governor of Anambra State, Peter Obi, has advised the federal government to secure Nigerians' buy-in before effecting any policy changes embodied in the tax reform bill currently before the National Assembly. He disclosed this in a statement on Monday, joining the discourse on the bills, which have faced criticism, especially from northern stakeholders. The former presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 general elections maintained that while tax reform is a critical issue and there is nothing wrong with pursuing it, such reforms must be subject to robust and informed public debate. Obi argued that the public hearing on tax reform is essential, allowing Nigerians from all walks of life to engage meaningfully, adding that this is how public trust is built and inclusivity in policymaking is ensured. Staying with the tax reform bills, the Northern Coalition Group for Senator Jibril Barau has voiced support for the tax reform bills, emphasizing their potential to fix Nigeria's tax system. During a peaceful protest at the National Assembly in Abuja, Chairman Malam Tijani Kabiru Mohammed urged lawmakers from the 19 northern states to back the bills and expedite their passage. However, Mohammed expressed concerns over the timing and VAT variations in the bills, but called on opponents to reconsider their stance for the nation's benefit. The bills have sparked controversy, with figures like Senator Ali Ndume opposing them, citing a lack of constitution with the Governors Forum and traditional rulers.
That the tax reform bill is in order, and Nigerians should work towards its perfection and also her progress.
Yes, sir.
For so long, we have lived on a decadence of tax reforms that has not produced anything good or meaningful to this nation. We from the North, we are categorically in support of this tax reform bill. And let me tell you one thing, to those who have for the past few days castigating Senator Jibrin Barrow, they are nothing but enemies of the North, enemies of Nigeria, enemies of our generation, enemies of progress, and they are supporters of disrogation. We call on Nigerians here, as we have vowed, we shall continue to voice from one state to the other, from one region, from Middle Belt, from North Central, Northwest, Northeast. We shall canvass, and this bill, by the grace of God, shall see the light of the day.
We now head to the Parliament. The Senate has confirmed the appointment of Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyede as the substantive Chief of Army Staff during its plenary sitting on Tuesday. Oluyede's confirmation followed the adoption of the Committee on Armies report presented by its chairman, Senator Abdulaziz Yardua of APC Katsina Central. Lieutenant General Oluyede was appointed to act as the Chief of Army Staff following the illness and subsequent death of Lieutenant General Taoreed Abiodun Lagbaja. Yardua informed the senators that Oluyede demonstrated an in-depth understanding of the nation's security challenges and solutions. The lawmaker noted that Oluyede impressed the committee with his high level of understanding, achievements, and excellence as outlined in his credentials. Staying with the Parliament, the House of Representatives is seeking an investigation into the recent boat accident in Nigeria. The call for probe follows a motion adopted on Tuesday citing the need to address the incessant boat mishaps in Nigeria's waterways. The motion was sponsored by Mr. Onyime Idem, who noted that Nigeria has witnessed a surge in boat mishaps, resulting in loss of lives and property. He added that the recent surge in boat accidents has raised concerns about the safety of Nigeria's waterways and the need for urgent intervention. With the adoption of the motion, the House urged the federal government through the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy and Minister of Transportation to conduct a thorough investigation into the recent boat mishap in Nigeria to provide insight and recommendations on improving maritime safety. It also urged NIMASA and NIWA to enforce safety regulations and ensure compliance with international maritime standards. And President Bola Tinubu of Nigeria and President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa attended the signing ceremony of the SA Nigeria Binational Commission at Taoreed. The event featured the signing of agreed minutes and the reading of a joint communique by Ministers Roland Lamola and Ambassador Bianca Udemegu Ojukwu. Both leaders were joined by a high-level delegation of ministers and senior government officials, underscoring the importance of the bilateral discussions and agreements aimed at strengthening ties between the two nations. In the meantime, President Cyril Ramaphosa says South Africa's presidency of the G20 will amplify Africa's voice and prioritize the continent's development needs. As the first African nation to lead the grouping, South Africa aims to address poverty, unemployment, inequality, climate change, and debt. South Africa has taken over the rotation presidency of the G20, vowing to put Africa's priorities at the forefront. President Ramaphosa says this is a momentous occasion for the continent and developing countries. South Africa will focus on tackling poverty, unemployment, and inequalities, as well as addressing climate change and energy, food security, and debt. The country aims to bring an African perspective to global governance and reform. Now, to further discuss this, I beg your pardon. To further discuss this, I'm joined by Godson Azu, Global Affairs Analyst. Godson, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, good evening. It's my great pleasure joining you this evening here.
Okay.
From here.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay. So what do you believe South Africa's presidency of the G20 means for Africa's influence in global economic and also political discussions?
Well, I think it's one of the greatest things that will happen to Africa as a continent at the moment. It's rather unfortunate that South Africa is taking the place of Nigeria in global affairs discussions. And for me, I think it should have been the right place for Nigeria, based on Nigeria's population and demography and its economy, to be in the position where South Africa is today, sitting at the table, global table of discourse, to discuss the greatest interests of Africa at the new global agenda. We all see South Africa playing a role that unfortunately they found themselves in with the gap Nigeria created as a result of our inability to be well organized as a state, as a government, as a people, and also to be focused in our foreign policy direction. We can say that in the last 30 years, since 1994 to date, since South Africa overcome the apartheid era and became a self-governing state within itself, they've been able to shape their relationship within the global arena in order to find a space where they can play a major role. And as such, they've been able to drive their interest to the tables of discussion in global agenda, either it be at the G20 or the BRICS, or even at the EU, even at the United Nations. And that is what you expect from an emerging economy. That's what we're expecting from a country that is building a global presence in a modern day society. We all know that what South Africa is doing is for the greater benefit of Africa, as long as they try to protect the interest of African development, African survival, African resonance in global affairs. And I think Nigeria needs to wake up to this reality and begin to strengthen its further relationship with South Africa in order to find a buy-in in this whole affairs as the world continues to re-emerge from its unipolar, bipolar to multipolar global order. And as such, the only way Nigeria or Africa can be relevant is when the voices continue to rise at the tables of discussion. It's very, very admirable and commendable that South Africa in the last 30 or 20-something years now has been playing that major role by being the voice of Africa at this global economic roundtable and political circles around the world.
A phrase that you used where you said Nigeria has to wake up to responsibility, implying that Nigeria is the sleeping giant of Africa, so I get it there. But President Ramaphosa has emphasized tackling poverty, inequality, climate change during the G20 presidency. How would Nigeria have done any better if Nigeria was in this position like you have just suggested?
Yeah, of course, Nigeria would have done better because it's all about population. It's all about the demography. It's all about the economy. It's all about the power to negotiate. It's all about the ability to be seen at the table of discussion. Nigeria needs to work harder to be seen as a key player in African affairs and not just a regional player and not just being an invited guest to global affairs. We need to be one that is at the forefront of these opportunities when they come up at any point, at any time, because this is the only way we can begin to show our strength. This is the only way we can begin to show our leadership role. This is the only way we can show that Nigeria is ready to take up challenges on behalf of Africa. South Africa is less than 50 million people in population, if I'm not mistaken, but you can compare that with a Nigerian population of about 220 million. That's a huge market. That's a huge economy. That's a huge population for global interventions. And so we need to move from non-alignment or alignment procedures and to be part of the discourse And we can only be part of discourse if we begin to change our foreign policy dynamics. We begin to change our ideological strands in the way we approach international issues. There's two key directions in the international community. Either you are a liberal or you're a realist.
Okay, Mr. Azu. Mr. Azu, so now let's talk about the influence of leadership of these two different countries now, Nigeria and South Africa. First off, I want to say let's give South Africa its laurels for getting this position. But how do you think South Africa's leadership will impact the relationship between Africa and the global powers, such as the US and China? And if you put Nigerian leadership in that position, how would it fare as well?
Well, the dynamics of South Africa is quite different from the dynamics of Nigeria. South Africa is made up of racial combinations of people from even Europe, people from the US, people from the United Kingdom, people from India, people from Asia, all make up a lot of the population's growth of South Africa. And its politics is woven around this race nationalities that build up the entire nations of South Africa and its economy. And so there's a lot of internal influence to how South Africa approach their external relationship with other countries. And so South Africa, the president is doing whatever he can to sustain the liberal influence of South Africa in the global discourse, because all the establishment, institutions around the world are institutions that are driven by liberal agenda. The liberal agenda says that states cannot be the determining factor in how global affairs are resolved, but that people should come together and cooperate and collaborate and share ideas and values that will enable peace, trade, economy to grow among nations. And so, but you look at, and that is the principle whereby South Africa is pitching his tent. In order to be part of that global discourse, you need to showcase your foreign policy dynamics, your ideological strands in terms of your power of engagement and power of discourse. And as such, Ramaphosa has been doing what he can to make South Africa relevant in every of these discourse, and as such, using South Africa as a kind of an instrument to reposition Africans' interests in the global divide. Because what we are talking about now is a multipolar society or a multipolar world order where US, China, European Union are beginning to determine what happens around the world. And where is Africa? Somebody needs to bring Africa to the table at all times. Somebody needs to mention Africa at all times of discussions around the global discourse, whether I be at the G20, whether I be at BRICS, whether I be at the UN, whether I be at IMF, whether I be at World Trade, whether anywhere that issues concerning the global world order needs to be discussed, Africa needs to have a voice. And that voice has to be led by a certain leadership. And if South Africa has found itself in that position, we all need to support South Africa to ensure that they keep making Africa relevant at the global discourse. And if, as the agenda drives further on, and Nigeria begin to build a very strong and reliable relationship with South Africa, then South Africa and Nigeria will ensure that whatever that will drive Africa prosperity is collectively driven by these two leaders, because the global South needs strong leadership, and strong leadership can only be achieved by a constructive governance system, a strong economy, and a collective agenda that is driven by an understanding of the leadership that are driving this purposeful agenda on behalf of Africa. And so I would say Ramaphosa, kudos to him for what he's doing on behalf of Africa at the G20. I'm sure his presence and his words and his speeches at the G20, his representation at the G20 would enable Africa to begin to have a greater gain of its resources, greater gain to his resources.
All right, Mr.
Because
Azu.
we have lost, Africa is losing his resources at the expense of the developed countries.
All right.
And now we need to begin to challenge the developed countries on why Africa needs to be a more gainer of its own resources for its own people. And
Mr. Godson, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. Africa does need to challenge the rest of the world. We have to put a wrap on it here for that subject. But thank you very much, Mr. Godson Nazu, for joining us and giving us your expert opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. Thank you very much.
We're now going to break. Time for a break, and when we get back, we are going to be talking about Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu signing in the Electricity Bill 2004, or rather 2024, into law. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has signed the Lagos Electricity Bill 2024 into law, paving the way for a comprehensive overhaul of the state's energy sector. The new law aims to ensure a 24-hour electricity supply to every corner of Lagos, a major step towards transforming the state into a global city with reliable and uninterrupted power supply. Governor Sanwo-Olu signed the bill at the Lagos House Ikeja on Tuesday, emphasizing its significance in addressing the state's energy challenges. The Lagos Electricity Bill 2024 outlines measures to enhance power generation, distribution, and regulation, including the establishment of a new state electricity authority. This move follows the federal government's approval for states to generate and distribute energy in 2023. The Lagos state government has also called for bids from independent power producers and energy solution firms to construct gas-fired power plants aimed to bridge the state's persistent electricity gap. And stakeholders in Nigeria's public sector have rejected the proposed amendment of the Nation's Procurement Act, suggesting stricter penalties for contractors who delay or abandon projects in the country. This was during a public hearing on a bill to amend the Nation's Procurement Act, which was held in the nation's House of Representatives. Our correspondent Idong Joseph reports on this story.
The prevalence of delays and abandonment of public projects by contractors in Nigeria has become a significant source of worry. While this has prompted calls for effective legislation to address and resolve these challenges, Nigeria's House of Representatives during a public hearing says that an amendment to existing Procurement Act which calls for stricter penalties on contractors who fail to comply with their contract terms is apt.
This culture of project delays preceded the current problem of inflation and devaluation. Hence, it is a problem that we now must address from a legislative perspective. The instant problem impacts governance in Nigeria and has affected our ability to deliver the dividends of democracy to the Nigerian people.
However, stakeholders at the hearing expressed varying opinions, insisting that such penalties already exist.
It is my considered opinion that the proposed amendment is not necessary, as this has been adequately provided for in all general conditions of contract and standard bidding documents as a matter of practice. This is in line with best global practice. I have come with original documents by FIDIC to address this point.
The Bureau therefore recommends that the committee should rather help in the proper implementation and enforcement of the existing laws by ensuring that funds for contracts awarded should be provided as and when due.
Lawmakers say that the Act will be reviewed in a bid to embrace efficiency and accountability in government's contractual process. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
Let's also tell you that an early fire incident has razed down about 50 shops at the popular Bayan Tasha market in Damaturu, the Yobe state capital. According to an eyewitness, the incident started at about 2 a.m. on Tuesday morning when electricity was restored in the area. At the time, all the shop owners had closed. However, the swift response of the federal and state fire services helped in quenching the fire from further destruction. Although there was no loss of life, already the response team of the State Emergency Management Agency is on the ground taking stock of the properties destroyed and a number of shops affected. And the former governors of Abia, Edo, and Kebbi states have lauded Nigeria's former president Olusegun Obasanjo for the administration of local government councils under his watch. They say that there is a need to address an evident decline of governance at this tier of government. This was during a national dialogue on local government administration and constitution amendment, where they were unanimous in supporting financial autonomy for local government councils. Our correspondent Idong Joseph here again reports on this story.
The state of local government councils in Nigeria has remained a significant concern. Despite being fundamental to grassroots development, these councils suffer from inefficiency, corruption, and a lack of autonomy. The recent Supreme Court judgment on financial autonomy for local government councils has appeared to be a ray of hope in troubled waters, expected to address this worrisome issue. At this dialogue, organized by the House of Representatives Committee on Constitutional Review, former governors of Abia, Edo, and Kebbi states say local government areas were better managed under the administration of former President Olusegun Obasanjo.
President Obasanjo was vehemently that there should be separation of power. By then you can see a councillor, a supervisory councillor, giving contracts to construct culverts. This is not what I'm seeing today.
Even the opposition party, by then, when won quite a number of councillors, they didn't win chairmanship position.
Was that deliberate?
Hold on. They didn't win chairmanship position, but they won over 30 councilorships.
While they expressed strong support for the recent Supreme Court ruling granting financial autonomy to local government councils, some raised questions about its expected outcome.
If I have to say, the judgment of the Supreme Court is amendment of the Constitution. Nobody should go anything. The National Assembly have no reason to amend any section of the Constitution. We do respect his lordship.
So freedom, autonomy to do what? Autonomy to take what the governor used to take is now to be taken by council chairman. If so, what will change?
As discussions on constitutional amendments continue, many believe that empowering local governments with fiscal and administrative autonomy will be crucial in fostering sustainable developments at the grassroots.
We must advocate for greater financial autonomy for local governments by ensuring that they receive adequate funding directly from federal allocations without excessive state control.
The governors are keen to collaborate with stakeholders, including development partners, civil society, and other arms of government to translate this autonomy into tangible improvements in the lives of our people.
The dialogue reflects the growing demand for systemic changes that could revitalize local governments as an essential component of Nigeria's administrative structure. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
Low-earning pensioners in Nigeria can now withdraw their entire retirement savings all at once or opt to continue receiving monthly pensions pending the approval of the minimum pensions guarantee. The announcement was made in a memo issued by the National Pensions Commission signed by A.M. Salem, head of the Commission's Surveillance Department. The change comes under the revised Section 4, subsection 1G of the Regulation on the Administration of Retirement and Terminal Benefits. The revision aligns with the new national minimum wage of 70,000 naira. Prior to this update, retirees could only access 1/3 of their retirement savings accounts, leaving many struggling to manage their post-retirement expenses. The National Pension Commission says this move aims to provide greater financial flexibility and security for low-income pensioners as they navigate their retirement years. Now, social media has become a significant part of our daily lives, especially for young people. But as concerns grow about its impact on children's mental health and development, the question arises, should Nigeria impose restrictions on even ban social media usage for minors under 18. New Central's Chidima Ona delves into the critical issue, exploring the perspectives of social media influencers, legal experts, and young people.
Social media has become an integral part of daily life. Concerns about its impact on children and teenagers continue to rise. In Nigeria, discussions are emerging on whether a law should be enacted to restrict or ban social media usage for minors under the age of 18 or 16. In an interview with Olufemi Oluyede, she dissects her points on the merits and downsides of social media for minors.
We cannot disagree with the fact that social media has provided a talent pool of child actors and singers and performers. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, there are people or young people who have been able to find their career paths, but the demerits are a lot. The demerits would involve the fact that social media creates an opportunity for an unrealistic perspective for these children whose minds are not yet fully formed.
Nigeria would not be alone in considering such measures. Countries like China have already implemented strict regulations on minors' use of social media and the internet. While in France and United States, debates on a possible legal restriction are ongoing. Legal practitioner Kalu weighs in on this.
Digital rights and access to information is something that has to be available to them in a safe environment, right? You have to agree that harmful content and danger that is lurking in the recesses of the internet and in other places like that can actually easily negate whatever benefits that is available to them there. And so it's got to be a process that is well thought out, that ensures that there is a balance between their access to information and that also protects them from the clearly harmful effects that we've seen in Nigeria and in other parts of the world.
A cross-section of Nigerians share their opinions on this topic.
Placing a law, then how are they going to police it? Now begs the question. If you place the law, so how are you going to police it? How are you going to enforce it? So, you know, a lot of things need to be in place. But it's a good idea, but then when you look at it, you're going to look how are you going to enforce it.
For a child to have a social media account, I think it's very risky because there are a lot of explicit content on it. So maybe they need phone for anything. They can just use their parents' phone, and they will be aware of it. Anything they are using, they will be aware and they will know what they are doing.
As the debate unfolds, policymakers in Nigeria will need to weigh the benefits of protecting minors against the challenges of implementation. For now, the question remains, should Nigeria join the growing list of countries implementing social media restrictions for minors, or should it focus on empowering parents and educating young users instead? Only time will tell. In Lagos, reporting for News Central, I am Chidima Ona.
Coming up, Ghana's vice president candidate for the Movement for Change, Kwame Owusu, speaks to News Central as elections draw near. Details after the break. And you're welcome back. The news now continues in West Africa as Ghanaians prepare to go to the polls to elect their next leader of the West African country on the 7th of December. Vice presidential candidate of the Movement for Change, Kwame Owusu, has expressed confidence in the people to make the right decision and vote in candidates with the country's best interest at heart. Speaking to News Central's Marshall Ononye, Kwame lamented the country's current economic status.
People have very limited options in terms of who they can choose to lead them. And so we are presenting a force that can be identified with the people, a force that believes in the aspirations of the people, a force that can effectively bring the transformation and the desired change that people are looking for. Yes, you can see that if you take a casual look at the country, you'd see posters and billboards of all these two leading political parties. Nonetheless, it is quite evident if you go to the rural communities and you speak to the local folks, it's quite axiomatic that they've had enough of the existence of the duopoly and they are clamoring for change. Which change they believe we possess and which change they believe once we are able to win these elections, we can bring to them. So that is precisely what our movement is predicated on. And we do know and believe that the Ghanaian people will give us an opportunity to also demonstrate to them what we have for them. One of the banes plaguing this country's economy is corruption. And we are going to fight corruption head on. If you look at what we are presenting what we have described as the Great Transformational Plan. It's not a manifesto, it's a plan. And we have identified how we are going to execute the plan, and we've also identified how we're going to sustain that plan. Now, one of the things that we are going to do to arrest corruption is to create what we have described as anti-corruption czar.
U.S. President Joe Biden arrived in Angola on Monday, marking his first and only visit to sub-Saharan Africa as president. Biden, who will hand over to Donald Trump on January 20, is set to meet with Angolan President João Lourenço in Luanda today. He is also scheduled to deliver remarks at the National Slavery Museum, highlighting historical ties and shared aspirations for progress. On Wednesday, the 82-year-old president will travel to Lobito, a key port city about 500 kilometers south of Luanda. There, he will spotlight U.S. investments in the Lobito Corridor, a major infrastructure project backed by loans from the United States, the European Union, and other partners. The trip underscores Washington's growing interest in Africa amid China's significant investment on the continent. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer insists in keynote speech that Britain will be able to ally with both a Donald Trump-led United States and its European neighbors. The Labour Premier has devoted a significant portion of his first 5 months in office on mending ties with EU after the previous Conservative government's bitter exit from the bloc. However, Trump's victory in last month's U.S. presidential election has raised fears that the Republican could complicate Starmer's so-called reset, particularly if he starts a trade war with the European Union.
This is not about the idea that we must choose between our allies, that somehow we're with either America or Europe, is plain wrong. I reject it utterly. Attlee did not choose between allies. Churchill did not choose. The national interest demands that we work with both.
Sports now. The FIFA Beach Soccer World Cup 2025 set to make history as the very first ever edition held in Africa. The tournament kicks off from May 1st to 11th in Victoria, that's in Seychelles. A stunning official poster has been unveiled capturing the vibrant culture of the host nation and the energy of beach soccer. Inspired by vintage postcards, it features a local boy juggling a football against the backdrop of palm trees, pink rocks, and pristine beaches. Adding to the fun, Seychelles school children will take part in a nationwide coloring competition next year, with winners earning tickets to the event. 8 of the 16 teams have already qualified, including Portugal, Spain, Senegal, and the host nation. Briton Daniel Dubois will defend his world heavyweight title against former champion Joseph Parker in Saudi Arabia on the 22nd of February. Dubois made a spectacular first defense of his IBF belt by beating Anthony Joshua in September. New Zealand's Parker held the WBO title between 2016 and 2018 before losing it to Joshua. Also on the card is Riyad Otto Betaviv, who will defend his undisputed light heavyweight crown in a rematch with fellow Russian Dmitry Bivol. Undefeated Londoner Hamza Shiraz will challenge for his maiden world title against WBC middleweight champion Carlos Dames, while British light heavyweight Joshua Buatsi and Callum Smith will meet for Buatsi's WBO interim title. And that's all this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of the major stories. Human rights lawyer Dele Faratimi arrested. President Tinubu Ramaphosa seek Nigeria-South Africa strategic partnership. And South Africa leads G20 meeting, puts Africa's need in spotlight. Remember, you can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and of course on YouTube. Many thanks for watching. My name is Mazino Appeal.